Let's now talk about discourse and text. What is discourse and what is text? It is important to understand the interconnection between these two terms also. Usually they are used interchangeably, and people may call a text as discourse, or a discourse as a text. Uh, and both can be right. But we need to understand what a text is, because it's a text which is spoken as or called as discourse in certain occasions by various authors for particular purposes. So at first place we need to understand what is a text. Is it a piece we speak, or it's a kind of combination of words we write on a piece of paper? What is it? According to Halliday, a text is something which makes sense to us in a certain situation. So anything which makes sense in a particular context to the listeners and the speakers may be called a text. And how does a text make meanings, or a combination of words make meanings? Its criteria is to look into the choice or intent of the speakers and listeners. It's people's choices which make the meanings, how they take a certain text in the particular context. And sometimes when the intentions or choices of people vary from each other, we have the misunderstandings of communication, or we call it communication failures. So choice is the basic criteria of understanding a text, and the meaning is the basic criterion which makes us decide that a certain combination of words is a text or not. Different patterns of textures are associated with different kinds of text. We do not have a certain uniform form of text, though grammatically we may follow certain patterns, but texts are divided based on their social uses also. And the division of text based on their social functions or events is called genre, and the analysis of text based on such social functions is called genre analysis in traditional discourse analysis. So a certain kind of genre has a certain kind of texture which distinguishes it from other kinds of text. Mitchell was one of the first researchers who examined the discourse or text structure of various texts. He looked into the structures of buying and selling, the discourse or text about buying and selling, and found certain important features about it. And he was also the first one who looked into the various stages of such communication or such discourse development. And his study was later on used to develop some sophisticated rules and techniques for traditional discourse analysis. The notion of genre in discourse analysis goes beyond examining the conventional structures of sentences. Rather, it also looks onto to the various ideas and social attributes and people's own choices related to a particular convention of writing. For example, writing for media may have certain conventions, and it may also have certain attitude on the part of people who write for the media. Similarly, writing for textbooks may have a different genre and texture, and the language used for the textbook may be different. Rather, it is different from the language used for media writing. So genre is something which leads us to think about the functions, especially social functions, of a text. A genre therefore can be called as a recognizable communicative event characterized by a set of communicative purposes. So genre is differentiated, or different genres are differentiated from each other based on their communicative purposes. In media, you have to address a certain audience, and in an academic text or a typical textbook to be taught in schools or colleges may address to a different audience in a different situation. Most often it is highly structured and conventionalized with constraints on allowable contributions. So genre is also constrained by certain set of rules of that particular field. As I said earlier, a textbook for example, would involve less informal language and more formal language, because it has to be taught in a formal setting, which is more obviously is the classroom, and it is also has to talk about some important themes or the ideas to be disseminated in a society in a formal way. So it has to be somehow in some kind of formal language, whereas media language changes from topic to topic. When we are talking about an issue of general importance, we may use more popular language, and when we talk about some serious academic topic, even on media, we might choose to use formal language. So there are three important aspects of a genre. For example, genres are communicative events. They are related to certain communicative tasks. They also have certain conventions and constraints which needs to be followed, and they involve creativity on the part of writer also. When we say there are certain conventions and constraints, we do not imply that there is no margin for creativity. For example, there are certain norms of writing for the media, but at the same time there is a lot of liberty to the writer or to the speaker on the media, that they can involve their own innovation also. There are different patterns of texture are associated with different types of text. Texts are, as I said earlier, are differentiated from each other based on their genre, their texture, their overall layouts, fonts, the forms of speaking involved in saying a certain text. For example, a typical newspaper article would involve a certain pattern. It would start with the summary at the beginning, and the details would come later. A typical newspaper headline would include important points in form of headlines or sub-headlines, and then later on we have details, and usually we see that some part of details is left for another page also. For example, see another page for the remaining details about a certain news. So but this kind of pattern may not be followed in textbook or any other form of writing. So we have certain set of rules to be followed in certain texts. So texts are those combination of words which make meaning to us, and texts are also divided or differentiated based on the genre they are written in.